So once again, I'm thankful to KCG for this invitation, and I have been asked to discuss about machine learning and generative adversarial networks. So when I received the call, my first question was, who would be the audience, who would be the participants? So it was told to me that we would have heterogeneous audience. So I believe that some of the participants would know little about machine learning, while there would be some participants who know quite a few things about machine learning. So basically, I am assuming heterogeneous audience. That is, there are participants with very good knowledge in machine learning, and there are participants who are just beginning in the machine learning. So keeping this in mind, I have planned my talk on machine learning and generative adversarial networks. So to address the heterogeneous audience, what I'll do is I'll talk about basics of machine learning to begin with, so that those who are beginning in machine learning, then they can get very good foundation. And then for those who are already working in machine learning, I'll be talking about one advanced topic which is known as generative adversarial networks. So generative adversarial networks is very advanced topic, very hot topic, and for many applications of computer vision and natural language processing, if you refer literature, you will find that state-of-the-art solutions are using generative adversarial networks or GANs. In short, they are also known as GAN. So this is the outline of my presentation. So I'll start with AI, ML, and DL. That is, I'll try to focus on the relatedness between AI, ML, and DL, maybe for 2-3 minutes. Then I'll talk about basics of machine learning. What is exactly machine learning? I'll try to define this very precisely so that you can have the exact idea. Then I'll talk about flavors of machine learning. Uh, this would be followed by difference between machine learning and deep learning. You know that everybody is now interested in working in deep learning. So I'll try to differentiate between machine learning and deep learning. And then the advanced topic, which is generative adversarial networks. So I'll talk about applications of GANs, architecture of GAN, and how you can train a GAN. So I'll discuss about all these things. So this is the outline of my presentation. So I said that I would like to discuss the relatedness between AI, ML, and DL. Dr. Patel had discussed a bit about it. So this is similar to that. So this is like a Venn diagram. This is like a Venn diagram. So you can see that artificial intelligence is like a mother umbrella. Artificial intelligence, as you can see over here, it is like a mother umbrella. Machine learning, they are specialized algorithms which fall under the category of artificial intelligence. And then if you look at the innermost circle, you can see that you have deep learning. So deep learning, they are even more specialized algorithms. So all this fall under the mother umbrella of artificial intelligence. So deep learning are the most specialized algorithms. Machine learning are also specialized algorithm, but not as specialized as deep learning. And you can see that both of them are ultimately falling under the mother umbrella of artificial intelligence. So this is the relation between AI, ML, and DL. Right now, I'm not trying to differentiate between AI versus ML and DL, because that requires certain foundation, and then you would be able to understand the difference. Later on, I'll definitely differentiate between ML and DL, maybe after some time. But right now, I'm not trying to differentiate between ML, DL, and AI. As of now, it's like you can think that they are specialized algorithms and they fall under the umbrella of AI. Now, next, if you can see, as I told you, that I'll start with the basics of ML, and then gradually I'll move to advanced topic such as generative adversarial network. So I'm starting with what is machine learning. So if I want to define machine learning, so I'll define and I'll also elaborate that what do I exactly mean by machine learning. So I can say that machine learning is an interdisciplinary field. Please notice what I'm saying. I'm not saying that it is a field belonging to computer science. Rather, I'm saying that it is interdisciplinary field. Why am I saying that? Because it has got applications for almost all fields. Like computers, definitely there are applications. Electronics and communications, definitely there are applications. Civil engineering, mechanical engineering. So basically, you pick up any field, you will find applications of machine learning. Basically, any optimization problem, any classification or clustering problem you have, that can be addressed using machine learning. That problem may belong to any domain, mechanical, civil, computer, electronics and communication, whatever. So what I'm saying, that machine learning is an interdisciplinary field whose aim is to inculcate human-like learning abilities into computers without programming them explicitly. So it may look difficult, but I'll break this down. Don't worry, and you will understand it thoroughly. So what did I say? I said that it is an interdisciplinary field whose aim is to inculcate human-like learning ability into computers. But for that, you don't want to program computers explicitly. So let me break down this definition actually so that you can understand it precisely. So I said that aim of machine learning is to inculcate human-like learning abilities. So all of you must agree that we human beings have learning abilities. Like if I want to give an example, so like when we were an infant or when we were a child, we were not knowing how to speak or how to communicate in the mother tongue. All of us are having some mother tongue, maybe Hindi or Gujarati or whatever it may be. But when we were infant, when we were child, we were not knowing how to communicate using our mother tongue. But then what we were doing at that point of time, we were experiencing how our parents were communicating in mother tongue, how we were observing how they were communicating using mother tongue. So through that experience, through that observation, we learned how to communicate using mother tongue. So please notice we have learning ability. This is an example. And how did we learn a skill of speaking in mother tongue? By experiencing, by observing our parents. They were talking in mother tongue. So we observe that, we experience that, and through that observation, through that experience, we learned how we can communicate in the mother tongue. So we human beings have learning abilities. Now through machine learning, what we want to inculcate this human-like learning ability into computers. But we don't want to program computers explicitly for this. So now what do I mean by this? Not programming computers explicitly. So I'm saying that you are not supposed to program computer explicitly for this. It's like you can do implicit programming. So explicit programming means, let's say you have some task and you want your computer to complete that task. Then you will write a program for that. And you will write the logic so that that task can be completed by your program. You will write the logic. So it's like, let's say you want to find a maximum of 10 numbers, then you will write the logic for finding maximum out of 10 numbers in a program. So when you do this, this is known as explicit programming. The other type of programming is implicit programming. There we want program to complete the task, but we don't want to write the logic for completing that task. Rather, we want to write the program in such a way that program can take the experience, program can observe, and through that experience, through that observation, just like human beings, they should be able to infer the logic. They should be able to figure out the logic on their own. So rather than we specifying the logic, we want computer to learn the logic on its own. So it's like I can say that, okay, these are 10 numbers. I can give some 10 numbers as an input to program, and I can also tell to the program that maximum out of this 10 number is this. I'm giving 10 numbers as an input to the program, and I'm saying that maximum out of this 10 number is this. You please observe this, you please experience this. I'm telling this to program. Then what can I do? I can do this for multiple input output pairs. Maybe hundreds or thousands or millions of input output pairs. Maybe millions of input output pairs where I'll present 10 numbers million times. And for all million times, I'll tell that, okay, at this moment, this is the max number. So it's like your program is observing million times that if this 10 numbers are there, this is maximum. If this 10 numbers are there, this is maximum. So from this experience, from this observation, it should figure out logic on its own. So this is known as implicit programming. So this is what do I mean by not programming explicitly. So now I have explained the important terms in the definition. I said that machine learning is an interdisciplinary field whose aim is to inculcate human-like learning abilities into computers without programming them explicitly. So you want to inculcate human-like learning abilities into computers, but for that you don't want to program them explicitly. If I want to give one more example, like let's say audience over here, I want them to learn some transformation. I want them to learn some transformation. So you understand transformation. It will take some input and will transform that input to output. So I want audience to learn the transformation. See, one solution is I can tell you the logic of the transformation. So if I tell you the logic of the transformation, then you will apply that logic on the input and you will have the transform output. So that's one way, but I don't want to tell you the logic. I don't want to do explicit programming. Rather, I want you to learn the transformation. I want you to learn the transformation. So what I'm doing, I'm saying that this transformation is such that when input is 1, output is 2. So please figure out. I'm saying, so I want you to learn some transformation. So I'm saying, so this is some input and this is the output or target. So I want you to learn this transformation. I don't want to tell you the logic of this transformation. So I'm saying that when input is 1, output is 2. I'm telling this to this transformation that when input is 1, output is 2. So audience over here can guess the transformation that this may be output equals to input plus 1. So please understand, I am not telling this transformation. What did I tell you? That when input is 1, output is 2. So now you think that how 1 can be transformed into 2. If 1 is the input, how that input can be transformed into 2 at the output. So some of you may think that this can be done if the transformation is output equals to input plus 1. While some of you may think like this, that it can be output equals to 2 into input. Because either of this will work. If input is 1 and output is 2, so either of these two equations, either of these two transformation can satisfy this. So what you need to notice, I did not tell you any of this transformation. This is, right now I am not having any participants, otherwise I would have asked. So it's like I'm telling you the input output pair, that if this is the input, this is the output. And you guys are figuring out that this transformation may be output equals to input plus 1 or output equals to twice the input. So you did this on your own. But right now there is an ambiguity. Right now there is an ambiguity because you are not sure that whether the transformation is the first one, this one, or this one. So now what I'm doing, I'm giving you second input output pair. I'm presenting you the second input output pair. So I'm saying when input is 2 to the transformation again, I have already given one input output pair. I have already presented one input output pair. Now I am presenting second input output pair. I am saying that when input is 2, output is 3. I have already presented this. There you guessed this 2, but there was an ambiguity because you were not sure that out of this 2, which one is the actual transformation. So I am presenting you second input output pair, that input is 2, output is 3. So now I think there is no ambiguity. Now this would not satisfy, output equals to 2 into input would not satisfy, but this will still satisfy. So now there is no ambiguity, and now you are sure that the transformation is output equals to input plus 1. But what you need to notice, what is the beauty over here? I did not tell you the transformation. I told you that when input is this is the output. I did it for maybe 2-3 input output pairs, and on your own you could identify this transformation. So this is known as implicit programming. This is not programming explicitly. This is known as implicit programming, where we are not telling the logic. Rather, logic is learned. Rather, the transformation is learned through the presentation of input output pairs like this. So this is what is machine learning. So now I hope you have understood the definition, that it is an interdisciplinary field whose aim is to inculcate human-like learning ability into computers without programming them explicitly. Now next, which we want to understand is flavors of machine learning. So there are actually 4 flavors of machine learning: supervised learning, unsupervised learning, semi-supervised learning, and reinforcement learning. So there are 4 flavors of machine learning: supervised, unsupervised, semi-supervised, and reinforcement learning. So what do I mean by supervised learning? So supervised learning is known as learning by example. Supervised learning is known as learning by example or learning by presentation of input-output pairs. Learning by example, example means input-output pair. Okay. So supervised learning is known as learning by example or learning by presentation of input-output pairs. So we just did that. You learned that transformation, y equals to x plus 1 or output equals to input plus 1. You learned this, that the transformation is this, output equals to input plus 1. How did you learn this? Through the presentation of input-output pairs. I said input is 1, target or desired output is 2. I said input is 2, target or desired output is 3. So I presented input-output pairs, and through that you learned this transformation. So supervised learning is exactly that. Supervised learning is learning by example. Example means input-output pair, means learning by presentation of input-output pair. So whenever you learn by presentation of input-output pairs, that is known as supervised learning. Now there are 2 sub-flavors of supervised learning. One is known as classification, and the other one is known as regression. So I'm saying that there are 4 flavors of machine learning. The first flavor is supervised learning. I define what do I mean by supervised learning. And now I'm saying that there are 2 sub-flavors of supervised learning, and they are classification and regression. So now what do I mean by this? So classification means your output variable is discrete in nature. Your output variable is discrete and finite in nature. While in regression, your output variable is continuous or real in nature. So there are infinite possibilities in case of regression. There are infinite possibilities for the output in case of regression. But if I talk about classification, there are some predefined values, and your output can take on one of the predefined values. Your output can take on one of the predefined values. So if I want to give the example of classification system and regression system, then let me take the example of a movie recommender. Let me take the example of a movie recommender. Personalized movie recommender. Let's say you have built your own personalized movie recommender. And let's say this movie recommender, so it's like this movie recommender will take some movie as an input. Some movie as an input. So movie as an input means not audio and video of the movie as an input, rather features of the movie. So movie would be converted into a feature vector. So genre of the movie is feature of the movie, then the run length of the movie. So genre of the movie is the feature of the movie, maybe run length is the feature of the movie, then the language of the movie is the feature of the movie, then maybe leading actor is the feature of the movie, then leading actress is the feature of the movie, then maybe director of the movie is also a feature of the movie. So in that way there are quite a few features. There can be quite a few features of the movie. Over here it's like genre of the movie, run length of the movie, language of the movie, leading actor, leading actress, director. These are some features. So I'm saying that this movie recommender, your personalized movie recommender, is going to take movie as an input. So not audio and video of the movie as an input, rather description of the movie in terms of these features. So if I say that genre of the movie can be one, movie can belong to multiple genre, but for simplicity I am assuming that it belongs to only one genre or the most appropriate genre. So one value here, second value over here, third value over here, fourth value over here, fifth value over here, sixth value over here. So basically if I am using the 6 features, my movie is described using 6 values. My movie is described using 6 values. So now you are giving some movie as an input, that is vector consisting of this 6 value. Vector consisting of this 6 value describing the movie as an input. I'm giving that as an input. And you want your movie recommender to predict whether you will like this movie or dislike this movie. So please understand, you are giving movie as an input. So it's like, let's say tomorrow is a Friday. So let's say tomorrow some movie is coming up and you want to figure out whether you will like or dislike that movie. So if your system says that you will like the movie, then perhaps you may go to theater. You may buy the ticket 500 rupees and then you can see the movie. So it's like it can help you. It can help you. And you know that if some movie is releasing tomorrow, you already have these features for that movie. Like you can go to Book My Show and from there you can come to know about the genre of the movie releasing tomorrow, some specific movie which is releasing tomorrow. So you will know that what is the genre of the movie, what is the run length of the movie, language, leading actor, leading actress, and director of the movie. So these things are known beforehand. So for the movie which is releasing tomorrow, you are constructing the 6 features and you are giving this feature vector as an input. And you want your movie recommender to predict whether you will like or dislike this movie. And then you can take the decision whether you will actually go and see that movie or not. But what you need to notice over here, that over here your output variable can either be like or dislike. Like or dislike. So we are already fixing this. We have already fixed up this. That movie recommender will either predict like or dislike. So this is a classification system. This movie recommender is a classification system. Because I told you that in classification, your output variable is discrete and finite in nature. So you can see this over here. Your output variable, there are only 2 possibilities, 2 discrete possibilities. So that is what is classification. That your output variable is discrete and finite in nature means possible outputs are predefined. Possible outputs are predefined. For the given input, you need to figure out that from the available output, which is the most suitable output for the given input. So that is what is known as a classification system. Now the other variant of supervised learning is regression. So classification would be learnt using presentation of input-output pair only. Like if you want to learn this movie recommender system, then maybe you want to construct this data. Maybe movie 1, historical movie 1, movie which you had seen in the past, whether you like or dislike that movie. Then movie 2, whether you like or dislike that movie. So this sort of data maybe for 100 movies. So these 100 movies you had seen in the past, maybe you are 40 years old and till now you have seen 100 movies and you are ready to tell to the system that this 100 movies which you have seen in the past, whether you like them or dislike them. So maybe out of this, the 70 movies you might have liked and 30 movies you might have disliked. So basically these are input-output pairs. Movie 1, like or dislike. So maybe like can be 1 and dislike can be 0. So movie 1, so 6 features of movie 1 and output would be either 1 or 0 depending upon whether you liked movie 1 or you did not like movie 1. Same for M2 up to M100. So like you have 100 input output pairs. Your input is feature vector of size 6 and your output is 1 value, 1 or 0, 1 indicating you like that movie, 0 indicating you did not like that movie. So using these 100 movies which you had seen in the past, and you can use supervised learning by presentation of input-output pairs. You have 100 input-output pairs. So through these 100 input-output pairs, you can learn this movie recommender system. But you are learning it to predict either like or dislike. So your output variable is discrete in nature, finite in nature. So this is a classification system. The other variant of regression, other variant of supervised learning is regression. So I told you that in regression, your output variable is real or continuous in nature. It can have infinite possibilities. So now you want to build a movie recommender system. You will give movie as an input and you want your movie recommender system to predict rating of the movie on a continuous scale of 1 to 5. Please understand. You want it to predict a rating of the input movie on a continuous scale of 1 to 5. I said continuous or real scale of 1 to 5. So you know that between 1 and 5 there are infinite real numbers. Between 1 and 5 there are infinite real numbers. So that movie recommender can predict any value. It can predict, let's say, 1.5. It may predict maybe 2.8. It may predict maybe 3.9. It may predict maybe 4.22. You don't know. I am saying that you want to predict the rating on a continuous scale of 1 to 5. So continuous scale of 1 to 5, there are infinite real values between 1 to 5. So this, and in that case, your movie recommender is a regression system because it is going to predict the rating of the movie on a continuous scale of 1 to 5. So to learn regressor, you need appropriate data. So like for movie 1, now you should not have like and dislike. Rather, you should have that what was your rating for movie 1. That your rating for movie 1 was 2.5. Your rating for movie 2 was maybe 3.7. So this kind of data now you need. This kind of data now you need. Then you can learn a regression model. But what you need to remember that classification and regression both are supervised learning system. Means classification and regression systems or models both are learned using presentation of input-output pairs. So these are two sub flavors of supervised learning. Next is unsupervised learning. So I told you that supervised learning is learning by experience, learning by experiencing, or learning by presentation of input-output pairs. So unsupervised learning is learning by observation. Unsupervised learning is learning by observation. So this is learning through experience, learning by presentation of input-output pairs, or learning by presentation of examples. Examples means input-output pair. I am saying unsupervised learning is learning by observation. So observation means just inputs. So it's like, let's say I'm teaching in a class of 60 students, and you know that each student has quite a few attributes, like whether student is wearing glasses or not, spectacles. Whether student is wearing glasses or not, it is an attribute of the student. Then what is the height of the student? It is also an attribute of the student. What is the weight of the student? It is also an attribute of the student. Let's say students are of 6th semester engineering. Then what were their percentage, or let's say CGPA or SPI, CPI, whatever, in semester number 1 to 5. So they are also their attributes. So if I'm teaching in a class of 60 students, you know that each student has got quite a few attributes. But let's say if I observe one attribute of the student, that is whether they are wearing glasses or not, spectacles or not, then what would happen? Automatically, students would be divided into two groups. Automatically, because I am observing whether students are wearing glasses or not. So this will lead to two groups. One group where students wearing glasses would be there, and another group where students not wearing glasses would be there. So if you perform unsupervised learning, that is learning by observation, it leads to grouping or clustering. It leads to grouping or clustering. How many groups or clusters would be created? Which kind of groups or clusters would be created? That depends on which attribute you observe. Like rather than observing whether they are wearing glasses or not, if I observe, let's say, height and weight of the student. If I observe height and weight of the students, then I may have three groups. One group where we have students who are obese, overweight student. Another group where we have students whose weight is perfect. Weight and height is perfect. They are not obese. And there may be third group where we have students who are actually underweight in accordance with their height. So please understand, if I observe height and weight of the students, then there would be three clusters or three groups. One group of obese students, second group of perfectly weight students, and the third group where there are students with the less weight than the normal. So what you need to understand that unsupervised learning is learning by observation, and you observe attributes, and based on what you observe, groups or clusters are created. So this is unsupervised learning. I'm not getting into details of semi-supervised learning and reinforcement learning. That can be discussed maybe in some other talk. Okay. Next, what we can understand is what is the difference between machine learning and deep learning. So we will try to understand that how machine learning and deep learning are different. So this is so I have written, means I have citations for each of this actually. So this slides are not original slides. I should have this disclaimer. I'm having this disclaimer at the end of the presentation, but the slides are definitely not original slides. They are prepared from various sources for teaching purpose. So let us try to understand this. What is the difference between machine learning and deep learning? So difference is actually summarized on this slide. So let's say I want to build a system. I want to build a system which will take some image as an input, and that system should predict whether that image is of car, or it is not of car. You can see these two things here. So please understand what I'm saying, that we want to build a system which will take some image as an input, and it will predict whether the input image is of car or it is not of car. So you can understand that in the output we want to predict either car or not car. So this system is actually a classification system, because there are two possibilities in the output, discrete and finite in nature. So this system is actually a classification system. Now if you want to use machine learning for this, then you need a domain expert. So that domain expert would be some person, okay, who knows the domain very well. So that domain expert needs to figure out that which features are good to distinguish between car and not car. You are giving image as an input. So if you want to distinguish whether the image is of car or it is not of car, then which features are crucial, which features are critical. So who will decide this? Domain expert. Some human domain expert would decide that these features are important to distinguish between the image of a car and image of not a car. So he needs to decide which are these features. So he may decide that, okay, some 5 features, F1 to F5, are required to distinguish between car and not the car. Now he also needs to decide that, okay, I have decided these 5 features, but then how these 5 features will be extracted? Which are the methods, which are the statistical methods or image processing methods? See, my input is image data. So which are the statistical method or image processing method which will help me extract those 5 features? So I hope you have noticed, you need a domain expert to decide which features are important. Once that is decided, you also need to decide that which are the methods, maybe statistical methods, maybe image processing methods, which can help you extract those 5 features. So now let me assume that each feature is one value. So if this is done, what would happen? Your input image would be converted into a feature vector. It would be converted into a feature vector, and there would be 5 values, because I am assuming that each feature is represented by one value. This is just for explanation purpose. So your image is now converted into a vector of size 5. This would be given as an input to a classifier. And that classifier, using these features, would be able to decide whether the input image is of car or it is of not the car. But you need to notice that over here, human intervention is required. You need human intervention. You need a domain expert who will decide which features are important and how to extract those features. And then your machine learning model, classification model, will act on the feature vector representation of the input and will do the necessary task of predicting whether the input is of car or it is not of the car. And over here, your classification model, as you can see, if you have a bit of knowledge about machine learning, then this is artificial neural network. It can be any other classification model as well. This is the artificial neural network. Now, for the same problem in deep learning, same problem, I'm not changing the problem. But now, rather than using machine learning to solve this problem, I'm using deep learning to solve this problem. So again, my input is image. So that image can be of a car or it can be of something else. And I want to output whether the input image is of car or it is of something else. But I want to use deep learning now instead of machine learning. So in deep learning, typically we use a deep neural network. In deep learning, typically we use deep neural network. See, in machine learning also you have artificial neural network. But in machine learning, typically we use shallow ANN. That is, ANN which we use in machine learning are not too deep. There are reasons for that. I'm not focusing on that. Otherwise, there would be a 1 hour separate talk on that. But typically in machine learning, we use shallow ANN. Means your neural network is not very deep. That is, it can have 1 or 2 hidden layers. Like this is input layer, This is output layer and this is one hidden layer. But if you use ANN in machine learning, typically you use one or two hidden layers. But in deep learning, you can use tens or hundreds of hidden layers. You can use tens or hundreds of hidden layers. Like over here, you can see two hidden layers. The first layer is known as input layer. The last layer is known as output layer, and layers in between are known as hidden layers. Over here, I have shown only two hidden layers, but you can have maybe tens of hidden layers or maybe hundreds of hidden layers. Tens of hidden layers or hundreds of hidden layers are possible. And you can see that there is no domain expert, there is no human intervention. So you will give image as an input, and because your network is very deep, means it has got quite a few hidden layers. Earlier layers, maybe except last 2, 3, maybe except last 2, 3. So you may assume that we have 20 hidden layers over here. 20 hidden layers over here. So except last 2, 3, all earlier layers will take the responsibility of feature extraction or feature engineering. In machine learning, this was the responsibility of domain expert. Domain expert needed to identify that which are important features and how to extract them. While over here, your deep neural network will identify, will decide which are the important features and will extract them. So you don't need domain expert. You don't need domain expert. So no human intervention. No human intervention. So earlier layers will take this responsibility of converting image into feature vector. Earlier layers will decide which are important features and how to extract them, and will convert your input image into feature vector. And maybe last 2, 3 layers, last 2, 3 layers would take the responsibility of classification, and you will have the output like car and not car. So this is machine learning versus deep learning. And deep learning algorithms, most of the deep learning algorithms are performing better than machine learning algorithms, because if there is a domain expert in between, then human bias would come into picture. How good the domain expert is actually, that will impact the quality of the result. But over here, there is no human intervention. So you are not now anymore subjected to the quality of the domain expert. Rather, your network, your deep neural network is going to take care of feature extraction as well as classification. Fine. So this is regarding the basics of machine learning, because as I was told that we will have heterogeneous audience, so I thought that I should cover some basics and then I should move to advanced topic. So we are done with the basics. Now I'm starting with the advanced topic, which is generative adversarial network. So first thing you need to remember, so we are going to talk about GAN, which stands for generative adversarial networks. Generative adversarial networks. So first thing you need to remember is GAN is actually generative network. GAN is actually generative network. See, if I talk about this classifier, then this classifier is a discriminator or discriminative network. Classifier is a discriminator or discriminative network, because what they do, they take the input, there are possible outputs, they discriminate between possible outputs and identify the most suitable output for the given input, identifies the most suitable output for the given input. So they discriminate, there are possible outputs, from that it will select one, so it is discriminating from the available possibilities. So they are actually discriminative network. So if I say my input is X and my output is Y, they are learning conditional probability of Y given X. That what is the probability of Y given X, where X is input and Y is the output. So for each Y, if there are 5 classes, it's like you will have Y1 to Y5. So you will estimate probability of Y1 given X up to probability of Y5 given X. So basically, classifier or classification model is a discriminative network because it discriminates among the possible outputs and decides the best output which for the current or given input, present input. But if we talk about GAN, if we talk about generative adversarial network, then it is a generative network. It is a generative network. In other words, I can say that they can estimate joint probability of X and Y, where X is input and Y is output. So your discriminative model estimates probability of each output given the present input. So if there are 5 possible outputs Y1 to Y5, I told you that it estimates probability of Y1 given X, Y1 given X to probability of Y5 given X, assuming that there are 5 possible outputs. So this is what is done by classifier. It estimates probability of Y given X. That is, it estimates probability of output given the input. But if I talk about GAN, I told you it is a generative network, and therefore it estimates probability of X and Y, joint probability of X and Y, joint probability of input and outputs. So there the major difference is. Now, before I proceed, you may be saying that suddenly, why am I showing you these celebrity faces? So if you look at this, these faces are looking like faces of some Hollywood celebrities. If you look at these two figures, they are looking like faces of some Hollywood celebrities. Now, typically in a live class, what I do, I ask students to guess the celebrity, guess the Hollywood celebrity. So for her, many say that she is Selena Gomez. For her, many say that she is Selena Gomez. Similarly, for him, there are some speculations. Then I take the quiz further, and then I show them some more faces. So now we can see some more faces. So now these two were there in the previous slide. I'm presenting you 6 more. I'm presenting you 6 more. So total 8 faces, Hollywood celebrity faces you can see on this page. So again, I ask them, typically I ask students in a live class that please guess who are these celebrities. So again, there would be some guesses. Again, there would be some guesses. Different students would come with different guesses for these celebrities, but there would be some guesses. But fact of the life is, these are faces of the people who are not existing on the earth. These are, I repeat, these are faces of the people who are not existing on the earth. These are faces which are generated by deep learning algorithm called generative adversarial networks. I repeat, these are faces generated by deep learning algorithm called generative adversarial networks. So a deep learning algorithm has generated these faces. And I think you would agree that if you look at the faces on this slide, nobody would be able to figure this out, that these are computer generated, deep learning algorithm generated faces and not the faces of actual Hollywood celebrities or actual people who are existing on the earth. But this is the fact. These are faces which are generated by generative adversarial networks. So now I think you can understand the power of GAN. GAN can actually generate faces like this. GAN can actually generate faces like this. That's the power of generative adversarial network, and therefore GAN is very hot and very popular nowadays. So this is one application of GAN, and amazing application. You know, it's hard to believe that a deep learning algorithm can actually do this. So like now your generative adversarial network is doing something which God is doing. All of us are having different face. God has given us some face. God has given us some face, and most probably all of us are looking, our faces are different. But now we can see that GAN is able to generate a face like God is able to generate a face. But that's the power of GAN. I'll present you a few applications to motivate you. Look at this. So this is pose guided person image generation. This is pose guided person image generation. So it's like you can see that I'm having a lady in this figure. So there are 2 figures actually, one on the left and one on the right. This is figure number 1. This is figure number 2. So we are having a lady in this image, and see this is the target pose. This is the target pose in which I want to generate this lady. I am having lady in the image. It is in some pose. I am having second image which is actually specifying the target pose. That is, I want to generate this lady in this pose now. And if you look at these dots carefully, you can see these two dots. So they are actually resembling left leg, and these two dots, which are actually resembling right leg. So from this, this is leg, this is another leg. So you can understand that we want to generate the lady where she is standing in cross leg position, because you can see that over here. So basically I'll have a GAN in between. I'll have a generative adversarial network in between. So this GAN will take these two images as an input. It will take this two images as an input, source image and the target pose for the source image. And this is the ground truth. This is actually the ground truth, means correct. The lady actually in that pose. And this is generated by GAN. This is generated by GAN. So please understand what is the beauty over here. Only this part of the lady is available in the source figure. Only this part of the lady is available in the source figure. Entire legs are not available. But we have given the target pose, and you can see that the lady has been generated with similar clothings, with almost similar clothings in the target pose, in the target posture. You can see that legs are cross. So again, this can be done using GAN. And authors of this paper, so I have this paper at the end, I have references at the end. So researchers who wrote this paper had actually created GAN for doing this. Had actually created GAN for doing this. If I want to give you a few more examples, then look at this. So again, quite a few examples, but like, again, you can see a lady over here, and these are four different poses. For different poses. So it's like you are going to give this source image as an input and different poses as an input, and you can see the corresponding outputs. Like over here, you wanted the leg position like this, and you can see that the lady has been generated with that position. Similarly, cross over here. So this is the beauty. Look at the target pose here, the third one, and the result here. So this is possible using GAN. This is possible using GAN, and I hope you can understand the commercial value of this. I hope you can understand the commercial value of this. See, nowadays, many of us buy clothing items online. Many of us buy clothing items online. And like when you decide some, let's say, t-shirt, then what you do, you want to see, so there would be some model. There would be some model, and you want to see that how that t-shirt looks like, from the front, from the side, from the back. So in different poses, you want to see how the t-shirt would look like. So typically, what they do is just like there's online sites. What they do, they will hire some model. That model would wear that t-shirt, and they will take some photograph in different poses. And you know that accordingly, model would charge. It's like one photograph, some charge. If multiple photographs, more charge. But now, what they can do, they can just take one photograph. They can take just one photograph in one pose, and the same model in different poses with the same t-shirt can be generated using GAN. So it's like they will not require to pay much now. So this is the commercial value. This is the commercial value of research like this. And again, this can be done using GAN. So again, GAN's power. Therefore, GAN is very. These are some of the reasons why GAN is very popular. It is actually able to address such an interesting problem and able to come up with such a nice solution, and therefore GAN is very popular. Look at this. Let's say you have some wallpaper at your home like this, and you like everything about this wallpaper except the zebras. What you are thinking that this wallpaper is very good, background is very nice, but instead of the zebras, if we can have horses, then it would be good. Then what you can do actually, you can scan this wallpaper. Scanners are available, so you can scan this wallpaper, and then you can use GAN. You can tell to GAN that, okay, this is the wallpaper, this is the image of the wallpaper, and I want to replace zebras by horses. And GAN can actually do this. So look at these two figures. These two figures are exactly same. The only difference is that zebras are replaced by horses. And what you need to notice that this is done seamlessly. what you need to notice is that this is done seamlessly. Now, if you take the printout of this in terms of wallpaper, nobody would be able to figure this out that this is not a real picture. But you know that this is not a real picture. Real picture involved zebras. But then GAN replace zebras by horses. And it has done this seamlessly. It has done this seamlessly. So that's the major point, that it has done it, but it has done it seamlessly. Nobody would be able to identify this. Yet another example you can see at the bottom. So this can be done using GAN. There was one popular GAN known as Cycle GAN. Cycle GAN could actually do this. So I'm showing all these results from some research papers. So I'm not saying that this can be done. This has already been done. Whatever applications I am showing to you, this have already been done by the researchers of these different papers. Then text to image, that is, it's like you can build a GAN where you will give textual description of the image you want to generate. Like you can build a GAN which will take textual description of the image you want to generate, and in the output, it will actually come up with the image as described in the textual description. So this is not a Google search, please understand. This is not a Google search. Like in Google search, you may type roses and Google will return you images of roses. No, it's not like that. This is not Google search. Rather, your model is actually generating image as per your textual description, which you are giving as an input. So like one example over here, like if you give this textual description that this flower has long, thin yellow petals and a lot of yellow anthers in the center. So your input is this. You gave this textual description as an input to GAN, and GAN came up with this kind of images, and you can see that they are according to the input description. Input said that long, thin yellow petals. So you can see that, and a lot of yellow anthers in the center. So that's what you can see. So this is stage-wise training. This is stage-wise training. Initially, they were looking like this, and then they started looking like this. So you can see anthers more clear in the second stage. But see again the beauty of this application. And again, this has been done in this paper. Text to image GAN. This was text to image GAN. So that GAN can take textual description and can generate image based on the textual description. So again, this can be done using generative adversarial networks, GAN. Image in painting. So image in painting can be done using GAN. So there are image in painting GANs available. So like let's say I have this kind of image. Unfortunately, somehow some portion of the image is gone. Let's say somehow some portion of the image is gone. Now you want to repair this image. You want to repair this image. So it's like you want to give this image as an input to GAN, and you want GAN to reconstruct the missing part. You want your GAN to reconstruct the missing part. Now look at the context available, the amount of context available around the missing part. You can understand that it is, some bird, and some part of the bird and some part of the background is missing. And your image in painting GAN actually produced this output. So you can see that how the missing part is reconstructed, how well the missing part is reconstructed. And again, who did this? Generative adversarial network. So therefore, you should know GAN. Therefore, I'm talking about generative adversarial networks. And see, again, you can have a practical application over here. See, nowadays, digital camera is very popular, but a few years back, maybe 20 years back, we were using that roll-based camera. So like we used to take pictures, then we used to go to a studio, and the studio will develop the roll film and will give us the hard copy of the photograph. Now let's say you have such hard copy, 20-25 years back hard copy of the photograph, and you have a child at your home, and let's say that child scribbles on the photograph. You have only one copy of that photograph. Now obviously that film through which you produce that photograph is no longer available. You have the hard copy of that photograph, 25 years old photograph. Unfortunately, a child at your hand, a child at your home gets that photograph, and let's say he scribbles on that photograph. So now you love that photograph because it is something related to your memory, but your child has scribbled on it. So now what to do? So maybe what you can do, you can scan that photograph. So now you are having a digital copy of that photograph. So in scanning, those scribbling will also come. And now you can highlight those scribbling and you can tell it to GAN that you repair this scribbling. Your child has scribbled on it, so you can tell to GAN that you repair the scribbling. That is, you reproduce the background in place of this scribbling. So image and painting GAN can actually do that, and now you will have a repaired digital copy. And then again, you can go to Studio and repair digital copy. Again, you can reproduce. So this is image and painting GAN, and it can also be used for producing special effects. It can also be used for producing special effects, like let's say you are having your photograph of bungee jumping. You are having your photograph of bungee jumping. So you know that in bungee jumping, they tie a rope with your waist. They tie a rope and then they allow you to jump. But let's say you want to show off to you among your friends. So what you can do, you can use image and painting and you can remove that rope. You can remove that rope and you could say that I jump from this much of height and still I am alive. So it's like you can show your skill, or you can just show off among your friends. So this is image and painting, and you have image and painting GAN which can actually do this. There is another GAN which is known as Disco GAN. Researchers in this paper, this is there at the reference, they proposed this GAN, which is they gave the name Disco GAN. And I think many married men would thank to Disco GAN. Actually, you know that ladies they are fond of matching accessories. It's like let's say they have a purse like this, so you can see that it is having specific color and texture. So then they would say that they would like to have matching shoes. They have this kind of purse, some color, some texture. So they would say that they would like to have matching shoes. So one can go to mall, can try to figure out if they can get the matching shoes, but you may or may not get. And then you know that man's life, husband's wife, would be in trouble. So what is the solution? Solution is Disco GAN. Solution is Disco GAN. So you can use Disco GAN over here. So what you can do, you can scan this purse. You can create, you can scan the design of this purse, and then you can use GAN. So to that GAN, you can give the design of this purse, and you can give the input that in this design I want to generate a purse. I want to generate a purse. So GAN would output, you would give this design as an input, and you would say that in this design I want to generate shoes. So GAN would actually generate shoes in that design. Shoes in that design. So this you can give it to 3D printer. This you can give it to 3D printer, and 3D printer would output shoes with the desired color and texture or design. So this is what is the power of Disco GAN. So there are so many examples. There are so many examples. So GAN can also do this. Pix2Pix, a wonderful paper. Pix2Pix can do quite a few things actually. Pix2Pix can do quite a few things actually. As you can see over here, it can do sketch to image or ages to photo. Ages to photo. Like that, Pix2Pix can take sketch as an input and can produce the image as the output, or ages as an input and can produce the image as the output. It can also do black and white to color. That is, it can take black and white photo as an input and can output corresponding color photo, that how that photo would look like in color. It can convert a daytime image into corresponding nighttime image. It's like, let's say you had gone to some place and you had taken the photograph of that place, but you had gone to that place in the morning. Now you are coming back to your native place from that place, and now somebody is telling you that you should have visited that place in the night. At night time, the beauty is something different. So you would regret. So instead of that, what you can do actually, you can use GAN. To that GAN, you can give this daytime image as an input, and you can ask GAN that you generate the corresponding nighttime image. So GAN would do that for you. GAN would convert the daytime image into corresponding nighttime image. So you would be able to feel the beauty, at least through the image. It can also do this aerial image to a map. If you're having aerial image of some geographic location, some geographic area, then that aerial view can be converted into maps. So many such applications, as you can see. So all this can be done using a GAN, which is known as Pix-to-Pix GAN, or simply Pix-to-Pix. Face aging. This is again a wonderful GAN. These researchers proposed something called Age-C-GAN. Age-C-GAN. So what is the beauty of this GAN? It's like, let's say you are 30 years old and you have your photo when you were 18 years old, when you were 30 years, when you were 20 years old, when you were 30 years old. So what you can do, you can give these 3 photographs as an input to GAN, and you can ask to GAN that how would you look like between 40 to 49, 50 to 59, and 60 plus. So GAN can do this. It's like you are having your photograph from, let's say, 0 to 10, 10 to 20, 20 to 30. So you can use this 3 photographs and you can ask GAN that, okay, this is how do I look like at various stages of my life. Now you please tell me how would I look like in the future, again at various stages of my life, future phases of my life. So it can actually produce that you would look like this between 40 to 49, you would look like this between 50 to 59, and you would look like this after 60. So this is face aging. And again, this can be done using generative adversarial networks. So you can see that I am presenting you quite a few applications, and all these applications are very fascinating applications. And I am telling you that all these things has already been done, and that is what is the beauty of GAN. That is what GAN can do. So after this, now I think we can look at the architecture of GAN. So I told you that GAN is a generative network. I told you some fascinating applications of GAN just to motivate you that you should know GAN, you should study GAN, and you should use GAN. Now, once I have done this, the next is we would try to understand architecture of a GAN. So GAN is a neural network actually. GAN is a neural network, but I would say that it is a composite neural network. Network. If you see the figure carefully, it has got something called discriminator, which is denoted as D, and it is a neural network. I'm saying that GAN is a composite neural network because it has got something called discriminator, which in itself is a neural network. It has got something called generator, denoted as G, and it is also a neural network. So you can see that you have a generator neural network and a discriminator neural network as a part of GAN. So generative adversarial network, it has got discriminator neural network into it and generator neural network into it. Apart from that, one of the most important things apart from this two is this real world images. See, I told you that GAN is a generative network. Means you can use it to generate. GAN is a generative network, means you can use it to generate. You can use it to generate images. You can use it to generate text. So it's on you that how you want to use GAN. You want to use GAN to generate images. You want to use GAN for generating video clips. You want to use GAN for generating speeches. You want to use GAN for generating text. So it's up to you. It's a generative network. It can generate. Now what it can generate? So you need to decide that. So like I want my GAN to generate images which should look like Hollywood celebrity faces. Please understand. If I want my GAN to generate images which should look like faces of Hollywood celebrities, then this real world images should be images of faces of actual Hollywood celebrities. Please understand. If I want to do this, then this real world images should be images of faces of actual Hollywood celebrities. Or let's say if I want to give another example, then if I want my GAN to generate natural images, if I want my GAN to generate natural images, that is natural scenes, images of natural scenes, then this real world images dataset, this is a dataset. So this dataset should be dataset of images of natural scenes, existing actual natural scenes. So what you want to generate is actually control by means of this data set. By means of this data set. If you want to generate speeches of some political leader, if you want your GAN to generate speeches which should look like speeches of some political leader, then this real world, this data set should have speeches of that real world leader, actual speeches of that real world leader. So this is something through which you control that what your GAN is going to generate, right? So for explanation purpose, I am assuming that our data set is a data set of faces of Hollywood celebrities. Is a data set of faces of Hollywood celebrities, and I'm assuming that the size of each image is 28 cross 28. I know it is very small resolution, but this is just for explanation purpose. This is just for explanation purpose. So please notice, what am I assuming? That this data set is data set of images, and these images are actually faces of actual Hollywood celebrities. These images are actually faces of actual Hollywood celebrities, and each image is of size 28 cross 28. So if my data set is like this, then GAN would learn to generate faces which should look like Hollywood celebrity faces. So from here I am controlling, and this would be my explanation application. This would be my application for the explanation purpose. So again, GAN is a composite network. It has got discriminator neural network, generator neural network, and data set which controls what GAN would generate. Data set which has got real instances, real images or real speeches or real text. So it would control what GAN is going to generate. And I'm assuming that this data set has got images, and these images are of faces of Hollywood celebrities, and the resolution of each image is just 28 cross 28. Now keeping this in mind, now let us focus on generator, what generator would do. So you can see that generator starts with a random noise vector. It starts with a random noise vector Z. Generator starts with a random noise vector. This random noise vector can be sampled from Gaussian or uniform distribution. Don't bother if you don't understand this math. You can understand that it is some random noise vector. It is some random noise vector, let's say of size 100. I am just arbitrarily assuming this for explanation purpose. So generator, you can see that it is starting with some random noise vector. I am assuming that it is of size 100. It is of size 100. Now generator, you please remember, it is an upsampling network, while discriminator is downsampling network. Discriminator is downsampling network. Downsampling means size of the output would be lesser than size of the input, and upsampling means size of the output would be more than size of the input. So you remember that generator would be upsampling network and discriminator would be downsampling network. So generator is starting with a random vector of size 100. Now what generator would do? It would upsample this. Please understand, generator, because over here real data set is of images of faces of Hollywood celebrities, so generator has to generate images and they should look like faces of Hollywood celebrities. So first thing is that these images are of size 28 cross 28. So what generator can do, this vector of size 100 can be upsampled to 256. So from 100 you are upsampling this vector to size 256. From 256 you can upsample it to 512. From 512 you can upsample it to 784. And this 784 you can resize. I'm saying resize because 28 into 28 is 784. So this 784 you can resize to 28 cross 28. So please notice, I said that generator is an upsampling network. It started with a random vector of size 100, means 100 random values. 100 random values. So these 100 random values were converted into 256 values by means of upsampling. 256 values are upsampled to 512 values. 512 values are upsampled to 784 values, and this 784 values are then resized to 28 cross 28. So now you are having a 28 cross 28 image, 28 columns and 28 rows. But obviously, you cannot expect more than noise into it. You want that this should be image which should look like face of the Hollywood celebrity. It should look like face of the Hollywood celebrity. But to begin with, this would be some noisy image. This would be some noisy image. But please understand, generator is going to do this. It will start with some random noise vector and it will upsample and will generate some special extent of size 28 cross 28. And you want that special extent or image to be to look like a face of a Hollywood celebrity. But obviously, to begin with, it would be some noise only. This image would not be at all interpretable. It would be some noise only. But generator is going to do something like this. We will get into more details of this in some time, but now let us focus on discriminator. What discriminator does? So I told you that discriminator is downsampling network. It is a downsampling network. So what it does, so now I'll get into training of this as well. So what it does actually. So let me assume that what discriminator does is like it takes 50 real images. It takes 50 real images. So maybe R1 to R50. It takes 50 real images and it also takes 50 generated images by generator. They are also known as fake images. They are also known as fake images because they are generated by generator from the random noise vector. So it's like I can use generator 50 times to generate 50 fake images. This 50 I am assuming arbitrarily. Okay, you could use 25 each. So I'm assuming 50 arbitrarily. So what discriminator is doing, it is taking 50 real images. So this 50 real images are faces of actual Hollywood celebrities, And now it is also taking 50 fake images. By using generator 50 times, it can get 50 fake images. So I'm saying that they are F1 to F50. And now, so R1 is real image 1 of size 28 cross 28. For this, I'll set the target 1. So for all real images, target of discriminator is set to 1. It's like we want the discriminator should output 1 for real image and it should output 0 for fake image. We want the discriminator, so discriminator has to discriminate between real image and fake image. So if the input is real image, it should output 1, and if input is fake image, it should output 0. So that is what is discriminator wants to do. That is what should discriminator do. So I'm creating input output pairs because I'll be learning discriminator using supervised learning by presentation of input output pairs. My inputs are 50 real images and 50 fake images. So total 100 inputs. And target for first 50 real images is 1 because they are real images. So I want discriminator that it should output 1 for the real images. And for fake images, you want that it should output 0. So like this. So it's like I'm having 100 input output pairs, 100 input output pairs. So what I'll do, I'll pick R1. I'll give R1 as an input to discriminator. I'll give R1 as an input to discriminator and I'll tell discriminator that R1 is a real image. Like in that transformation, I told you that when input is 1, output is 2. When input is 2, output is 3. So you were telling input and output both so that supervised learning can happen. So that your model can learn that transformation. So same over here. I want, just a minute. I want discriminator to discriminate between real and fake images. So I need to teach discriminator. I'll teach by presenting input output pairs of real and fake images. So I'm giving R1 as an input and I'm telling to discriminator that it is a real image. It is a real image. Initially, discriminator will have some random logic into it. So it will receive R1, will apply the random logic onto it and will produce some output. But it can produce either 1 or 0. Either 1 or 0. So let's say it is producing 0. So input was real. Unfortunately, there was some random logic inside it, which would be the case to begin with. There is some random logic to begin with. So that random logic is not good and therefore it is outputting 0. But you know that input was a real image, so desired output was 1. So actual output is 0, desired output is 1 or target output is 1, so there is an error. So we can calculate this error, and this error we can backpropagate to discriminator, or we can tell that you have made an error to discriminator. That we had given you real image, you should have given 1 as the output, but you have predicted 0 as the output. Desired output was 1, so you have made an error. So we are telling this to discriminator. This error we are telling to discriminator that you are making an error. You please update your logic, so that you don't make this mistake. So that you don't make this mistake. Now we use something called backpropagation or gradient, and within backpropagation we use something called gradient descent, but that is beyond the scope of this class. But it's like we are telling to the discriminator that you are making an error. You please improve your logic so that you don't make an error. So discriminator would try to update the logic so that this error is minimized. Now I'll present R2, second image as an input. And again, I'm telling that the desired output or target output is 1. Again, now slightly updated logic, because logic was updated through the presentation of R1, the first image. It had made a mistake, and we told the error to the discriminator, so discriminator had updated itself. Now we are giving R2 as an input, and target is again 1 because R2 is also a real image, and let's say discriminator is giving 1 as the output, so it has not made any error. So we are not telling anything to discriminator, rather we are telling that you are not making any mistake for R2. Now we will give R3. So again for R3, desired output is 1. But let's say this time again, predicted output is 0. So desired was 1, predicted is 0. So again there is an error. So again we will tell that for R3 again you have made a mistake. So you please update your logic. So we will keep on doing this for all 50 real images. And then for all 50 fake images. For 50 fake images, I'll say that for this the desired output is 0. Desired output is 0. So if any fake image is predicted as real by discriminator, any fake image is predicted by real, any fake image is predicted as real by discriminator, then there's an error for discriminator. That error we will tell to discriminator and we will ask it to update. We are not doing anything with generator right now. We are not telling anything to generator as of now. So in this way we are training discriminator. So I hope you have understood that how we are training discriminator. If discriminator is identifying real as fake, that is an error, and we are telling that to discriminator. If discriminator is identifying fake as real, that is an error for discriminator, and we are telling that error to discriminator that you are making an error, you please improve. While doing this, we are not doing anything to generator. So I have trained discriminator. Training discriminator means telling discriminator the errors it is making, so that it can keep on improving itself. And we have 100 input output pairs. We may, in actual scenario, we may have maybe millions of input output pairs, and we expect that through those millions of input output pairs, it would improve itself enough so that it can identify real as real and fake as fake. So we have trained discriminator. Now you also need to train generator. See, GAN uses alternative training. So we have trained discriminator, now we will train generator. So how do we train generator? So for training generator, we only use fake images. Like for training discriminator, we had used 50 real images with target 1 and 50 fake images with target 0. But for generator, for training generator, we will only use fake images. So it's like I'll have F1 to F50. We are already having F1 to F50. And now see, interesting. I'll set target to 1 because generator wants that when F1, that is fake image 1, is given as an input to discriminator, discriminator should output 1. See, discriminator doesn't want this. Discriminator wants to output 0 for the fake image. If fake image is there as the input, discriminator wants to identify it correctly and wants to output 0 for it. But what generator wants? That when a fake image is given as an input to discriminator, discriminator should not identify as a fake image, should rather consider that as the real image and should output 1. Should output 1. Means generator wants to fool discriminator. Generator wants to fool discriminator that I'll give fake image as an input to you and you will not be able to identify fake image as a fake image, and therefore you will output 1 saying that it is a real image. So that's what is the intention of generator, and therefore this is adversarial, generative adversarial networks. So adversarial, so it's like these two are in adversarial setting. These two are in adversarial setting. They are competing with each other. Generator is saying that I'll generate such images so that you will not be able to identify fake images as real. And discriminator says that I would be so powerful that how good fake images you generate, still I would be able to identify fake as fake image. So they are in adversarial setting. They are in competition. Generator wants to improve so that it can generate more realistic images, more real like looking like images. And discriminator wants to improve so that how good fake images are, still it can identify fake as fake and real as real. So they are in adversarial setting. They are in competition. So how would I train generator? So I'll pick up fake image 1, which is generated by generator. That would be given as an input to discriminator. And I'll tell a discriminator that your target is 1. Your target is 1. But discriminator has already been trained, means I had trained discriminator previously. Now I am giving fake image as an input and saying that the target is 1. But discriminator was trained, so it may happen that discriminator will identify F1 as the fake image. Therefore, it will output 0. Generator wanted it to output 1. Generator wanted it to output 1, but discriminator was trained, and if it was trained enough, then it would identify fake image F1 as the fake image and would output 0. But generator wanted that this would have been identified as 1 by discriminator. This would have been predicted as real by discriminator. So this is not an error for discriminator. This is what discriminator wanted to do. But this is an error for generator. Generator wanted that fake should have been identified as real. But unfortunately, fake has been identified as fake. So this is an error. Discriminator has predicted 0, means it has identified fake as fake. But the target, as far as generator's perspective is concerned, was 1. So this is an error. So we will calculate this error, and this error we will not tell to discriminator. Rather, we will tell to just generator, because discriminator is as such doing all right. Okay, it is identifying fake as fake. So we will not tell anything to discriminator regarding this. We will tell this to generator, means we are backpropagating error into generator. We are backpropagating error into generator, that whatever image you had generated, that is identified as fake by discriminator. So your generated image is still not very good. It is being identified as fake by discriminator. So you are not able to beat discriminator. So this is the error. So you please improve yourself. You please improve yourself so that you can generate better images which are looking more close to the real images. So that's what you are telling to generator, and generator listens to that error and tries to improve itself. So it will start generating better images. It will start generating better images. But then it is alternative training. So now you will train discriminator. You will train discriminator using 50 images from this, 50 images from this. So now discriminator will become even more powerful. That okay, you have started generating better images, but I am getting trained again. I was trained, then you were trained, now I am getting trained again. So even though you have started generating better images, even I have become powerful now through the second phase of training. So even though you are generating better images than the previous one, still I'll be able to identify fake as fake. So now when generator would be trained, generator would come to know about this, that okay, I am generating better images than previous, but discriminator has become powerful, so I need to become more powerful. So that error I'll tell to generator again, that discriminator has become powerful, it is still identifying fake as fake, so you please improve and generate even better images. So now it will start generating even better images. But now you will train discriminator. So discriminator says that okay, you have started generating even better images, but now I'm getting trained again. I'm getting trained again. So even though you are generating much better images, still I'll be able to identify fake as fake. So this will go on and on. This will go on and on. And in this process, discriminator will keep on becoming powerful, and simultaneously generator will also keep on becoming powerful. So you can do this for multiple iterations. So this is known as alternative training. Now you can have strict alternative training. So in case of strict alternative training, it's like we train discriminator once and generator once. Then again discriminator, then again generator. But it's not necessary that this has to be 1:1. It's like you can train discriminator k times and generator once. So k can be any value greater than or equals to 1. So you need to figure out that for your problem, which value of k works well. So in strict alternative training, you train discriminator once, generator once, then again discriminator once, generator once, and you keep on doing this. But you may not have strict alternative training. So there you may train discriminator k times where k is greater than 1. Let's say k is 5. So you'll train discriminator 5 times first and then generator once. Then again discriminator 5 times and then generator once. So you need to figure out that which value of k works well for you. K is known as hyperparameter of this algorithm. K is known as hyperparameter of this algorithm. Once this is done, what you can do, you can detach. Once this is done, I'm not getting into math because that is beyond the scope of 2 hours discussion. So once you do that, it's like you detach your generator. You detach your generator because it's again is your composite network. So what you should do, you should detach this part. You should detach your generator. And then what you can do now, this is no longer there. Generator has been separated out. Generator has been separated out, and you can see that generator takes a random noise vector as an input. It will upsample and it will generate 28 cross 28 images. But because discriminator and generators have been trained sufficiently, I'm assuming that we have trained them sufficiently, this 28 cross 28 images are more real-like images. More real-like images, and our real images were faces of Hollywood celebrities. So now we can expect that these images will resemble significantly to Hollywood celebrities. They would not be faces of actual Hollywood celebrities, but they would look like faces of Hollywood celebrities. So this was the logic which was. So these images were generated with this idea or this intuition. So this is your generative adversarial network. Yeah, so I think we can stop here because the next discussion would take another 20-30 minutes. So I think this is good enough. So I would like to conclude my talk here. So this is just a beginning. I discuss. So if I want to summarize, it's like I discuss basics of machine learning. Basically, what is machine learning? For different flavors of machine learning, where I discuss about two flavors, that what is supervised learning, what is unsupervised learning. We also had a discussion on classification and regression, and then we moved to generative adversarial networks, where initially I presented you some fascinating applications of GAN. I think all of you will agree that GAN can actually accomplish some very important and interesting task. And then we had discussion on architecture of GAN and training of a GAN. So by this, I would like to conclude this. So thank you. Thanks a lot.
Thank you so much, sir. As per the permission of advisor, sir, we would like to end the session. Thank you so much, Priyank, sir.
Yeah,
It was not only just a
invitation.
wonderful session, but the PPT was very interesting, sir.
Yeah, thanks a lot.
Proceeding towards the vote of thanks, firstly, I would like to thank our Honorable Principal Secretary, Anju Sharma ma'am, Honorable M. Nagarajan sir, CEO KCG, who has been a techno-friendly personality and has always strived to innovate new technical aspects. One of the example can be this webinar series on emerging technologies. Secondly, I would like to thank Professor A.U. Patel sir, advisor KCG, who has truly been an advisor not only for KCG but also for the consultants like us. He has been a constant motivator with regards to the growth and development of our personality, a constant learner and a true guide. Thank you, sir, for all these aspects. I would like to thank OSD of KCG and KCG for giving me this opportunity, and lastly, I would like to thank my team members. With this, I am ending the session And once again, I would like to thank Priyank sir to spare his valuable time and has been present at this webinar series.